New York City chapter's event. My name is Sharmeen Dasani, and I'm the current president of the NAIOP New York City chapter. It is good to see a lot of our members in attendance today. But for those of you who are not as familiar with NAIOP, this is a real estate focused organization and provides networking opportunities, educational programs, research, and strong legislative representation. NAIOP has 50 plus chapters across North America and approximately 18,000 plus members. With that said, we're very pleased to have a panel of experts today. And today we're going to be discussing how investors are leveraging data and Proptech in a highly competitive commercial real estate market. We have with us the following panelists. And maybe before I introduce the panelists, I can just go over a couple housekeeping items. So first of all, if you're not one of the panelists, we just ask you to stay on mute just to avoid disturbance. And the other thing is, if you have questions, there is the chat box. Just use that, and Carolina and I together will try our best to keep an eye on questions coming in from the audience. We will have time at the end, approximately 10 minutes for Q&A. But in the meanwhile, feel free to send your questions through in the chat box. With that said, I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists today. So first we have Sara Butz. She is Senior Vice President at the Black Creek Group. Sara joined Black Creek in 2011, where to date she has managed transactions, due diligence, and closing processes for over $3.2 billion in acquisitions and $390 million in dispositions across the company's various real estate platforms. In 2020, Sara spearheaded the internal implementation and launch of the company's transition to Dealpath, its cloud-based transactions pipeline and due diligence tracker. Ms. Butz also served as executive officer of the Women's Network at Black Creek from 2017 through 2020. Next, we have Jeff Kaplan. Jeff is vice president at GCP. Prior to GCP, Jeff focused on global industrial real estate and technology investments and executed transactions totaling over $1.4 billion while at GLP, including GLP's entry into India and expansion into Central and Eastern Europe. Prior to joining GLP, Jeff launched a real estate technology startup and spent 3 years with TPG Capital's real estate private equity team, including a year with Evergreen Industrial Properties, a TPG portfolio company. Next, we have Tim Walsh. Tim is partner and chief investment officer for Dermody Properties and is responsible for overseeing all origination activities such as acquisitions, development, and build-to-suit projects. His primary focus is working with the company's national team of regional partners to identify and target the best value-add industrial investment opportunities. Mr. Walsh has over 28 years of experience in industrial acquisitions and portfolio management and is based in the company's Midwest region office. He's been responsible for the acquisition of over 25 million square feet of core industrial space and 20 million square feet of value-add industrial space for a combined value of over 2.8 billion. Next, we have Mike Sroka, CEO of Dealpath. Mike co-founded Dealpath in 2014 and serves as CEO. Prior to Dealpath, Mike had spent over a decade growing venture-backed software companies, including Fanhood, acquired by Fox, Zynga, which is traded on NASDAQ, and One Season, acquired by Cantor Fitzgerald. He started his career in real estate at Hudson Advisors, managing agent for the Lone Star Funds. Mike lives in the Bay Area with his wife and 2 kids. He is a member of California Trout, ULI, NAIOP, ICSC, and Forbes Real Estate Council. So with that said, I always find the attendees like hearing a little bit more about the panelists. So maybe I'll turn it over to all of you, and maybe Sara, we'll start with you. Maybe just describe your company, your role in a little bit more detail. And if your focus is on specific asset types, I'd like you to share that, touch upon that as well. So Sara, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, sure, thank you. So Black Creek has been around for about 25 years. Over that time, we've purchased about $23 billion of property. We currently own about 71 million square feet across the country in around 31 markets. So we're very active buyers and owners and leasers of property. I work in our Denver office, which is our headquarters. My group oversees all the due diligence aspects once we get a property under control, but we've got acquisitions and asset management teams in around six regions around the country, including in the Northeast. We've got an office in New Jersey. So they source the deals, they throw them to us in Denver while we investigate them and close them, and then their boots back on the ground can continue to find more deals and operate them once we've got them under control. And so in that respect, collaboration is pretty key for our company to be able to communicate and share information and files back and forth. So that's sort of our big interest in technology.
Okay, thanks for that, Sara. Jeff, can I pass it over to you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff Kaplan. I'm a vice president at GCP, where I focus on industrial investing, as well as a number of our technology initiatives. Previously, I was part of GLP's global investments team that built our US platform, which we sold to Blackstone last year in a $19 billion transaction. On the heels of that transaction, spun out a new platform, GCP, and launched Modlo, which is our vertically integrated logistics real estate operating platform, where we focus on industrial investing across the risk spectrum. That includes stabilized acquisitions, value add, as well as development. Our team has nearly 40 people, approximately 20 million square feet of owned or under construction industrial real estate across the US, and are in scaling mode.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Tim?
Good morning, everyone. Dermody Properties is a Reno, Nevada-based private real estate company focusing primarily on industrial space. We're a 60-year-old company, and we have about 60 people operating out of around 10 locations around the country, really most of the tier 1 markets in the United States. We're focused on development and acquisitions, and lately sort of more development than acquisitions, as we're reacting to the current market trends and the demands of our customers. The trick with running a 60-person firm and that many offices is to try to create a seamless technology environment where we can communicate and react to opportunities as they come up. And I think it's a daily conversation with us about adding those kind of resources.
Okay, thank you, Tim. And Mike, I'll pass it over to you. And since a lot of the discussion will be around Dealpath and other technologies, maybe I can ask you to take a couple minutes to describe Dealpath for people who might not know enough about it.
Sure, and thank you, Charmaine. This is Mike Sroka speaking. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Dealpath. Dealpath is the leading deal management software for real estate investment. We empower firms that are involved in the acquisition, development, financing, and disposition of real estate assets. And Dealpath really serves as the command center for their front office to focus on value add work, to identify and mitigate risks, and to deliver optimal risk-adjusted returns. I always think of Dealpath as really serving from pipeline through portfolio management. We today have supported more than $6 trillion of transactions and power hundreds of top firms. I'm very excited to participate here with the other panelists, which include some great clients that we get to support, and want to thank Charmaine for moderating and NAIOP for hosting us here.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So with that, maybe we can go through some of the questions that we have discussed. And again, throwing out a message to the panelists, feel free to send any questions that you want to address to the panelists in the chat box. So of late, it seems that the real estate industry has seen several technology advancements. I've been working for over 20 years, and I certainly see huge improvements coming into the industry since the time I started. Definitely working in real estate. And so, some of these technologies have been focused on data and tracking, but also on workflow improvements and of late, more creative service-oriented apps that we're seeing, in the multifamily sector, as well as the office sector, more hospitality driven with the tenants and residents in mind. But just taking a step back, I'd like to hear the panelists' thoughts on why do you think the real estate industry has lagged some of the other sectors, especially as we compare ourselves to other financial sectors?
I'm happy to jump in there. I think this is really important. We talk a lot about how real estate has been a late adopter of technology, but really real estate has been underserved by technology and software for a long time. And I think that there's some good reasons for that. I think from our perspective, real estate is really big by dollar value. And we talk about, in the United States, the $17 trillion of asset value, or it representing 13% of our GDP, or the million professionals across 90,000 firms. There's no question that it is a huge part of our economy and way of life. However, real estate is largely comprised of companies that are relatively small by headcount. Some quick division will show that million professionals across 90,000 firms results in an average headcount that is quite small. And teams of 10, 20, 50, 100 people can manage billions and billions of dollars. And we'll talk more about that on the panel here. But it was very hard for legacy software to service a vertical or industry comprised of SMBs. And that's really changed with cloud architecture and infrastructure, with new software as a service business models, as well as with the market needs and demand pull. I think, with that, real estate has also been changing. Over the past couple of decades, we've really seen real estate become institutionalized as a global asset class. We see very clear economies of scale in real estate, and a high and increasing need for precision and speed in what is a very complex and competitive market. Those things together have really caused for the rise of real estate software services. When we look back, even just 5, 6, 7 years ago, real estate software services was, a cottage industry. There was a few very large incumbents that we've depended on for a long time, but not a whole lot happening. And we've seen this wave of investment and development over the past handful of years, measured in the billions and billions of dollars of venture capital. And I think now we're starting to realize the adoption and value of those new solutions that are being created. This was happening before the pandemic. And I think that COVID has very clearly been an accelerator in that adoption and recognition of the need. This mass market digital transformation is the single most important thing for the entire real estate industry. And it's happening right now.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mike. That makes sense. Does anybody else want to add on this topic?
Go ahead, Tim.
I guess I would just add, if you wanted to accelerate your adoption to technology in your company, even if you're small, as most real estate companies are, hire an engineer into your finance group. Casey Crack, who's an integral part of our program and on the finance team, came from an engineering background and has really been the one to spearhead all of the innovative technological adoptions that have gone on in our firm. And he brings a different background than a lot of us, who grew up in the real estate industry. So we wouldn't be where we are without him.
Yeah, we kind of piggyback off of that. Valuation software has been around in real estate since late 80s, early 90s, because that focuses on analytics and that value is seen and able to be perfected pretty early on. But all the rest of the aspects of real estate, which is very personal and as Mike said, kind of cottage industry, I think it took a while to, and until the cloud services became available, to really see the value and the potential of sharing data and to Tim's point, to really make a software service and serve the processes that acquisitions and transactions people need. You need the input of both experts in tech and also the experts in real estate, because they're the ones that know why every deal is unique and why things need to be adjusted. And all those people would prefer to be out doing deals. So I think it kind of takes a while to get people to sit still long enough to work together to bring something to the market like this.
And maybe I'll just add, for GCP, I mean, data is just a bedrock of how we operate. It's table stakes at this point. Dealpath, Yardi, Power BI, VTS, like we're incorporating business intelligence into all of our business units. And these are, concepts I don't think a lot of groups were thinking about 5 or 10 years ago, and now are our most basic requirements to be able to capture and surface our data. It's critical to our operations. It's critical to our funnel pipeline and things like Dealpath. It's critical to our ESG strategy, how we track energy usage over time. And even for us, it's kind of starting to go a level deeper. So beyond sort of capturing our own, information that our platform generates, it's developing internal data tools to try to improve our own investing. Sort of similar to Tim's example, we're working with a math and computer science professor and a big data scientist to try to create a data-driven algorithm to forecast demand and inform where we invest.
Thanks, Jeff. That's a very good point about having a little bit more diversity on deal teams versus just having everybody with your traditional real estate background. It just brought to my mind an example where once upon a time I was with GE Real Estate, and they had this great rotation program, and we had the fortune of having someone join us for 1 semester, person with a very strong finance engineering background. And it was hard to say goodbye to him because he probably made more improvements to just how we were doing things faster, being more efficient in my 6 years there. So that's a very good point. Okay, so just kind of staying on that theme, real estate has traditionally been a face-to-face, shake hands business. Has the broader, more aggressive adoption of data lessened this need for the personal touch, or has the data instead enhanced relationships since there is more transparency now? And I'll add a part 2 to that. Has the pandemic expedited adoption of technology at your firms or other peers that you're seeing? And what are some of the tools that you're relying on more, given what's going on around us?
I'll start with that one. I would say that basically nothing virtual can replace the value of in-place meetings. So I think on important things and people that you work with regularly, I think that continues to be very important. But I've noticed that during the pandemic, when everybody was grounded at home, that video calls ended up being kind of a nice change of pace as far as, we do a lot of development. So we have a lot of meetings with cities, municipalities, counties, that kind of thing. And usually those would have had to be in person and would therefore only be able to include the people that happen to be there locally. But now we can include more people from our team that are in other offices. We can see the people that we'll be working with over the course of the entitlement process for the next year and a half, that kind of thing. So I think that's been a nice improvement. I will say that the pandemic definitely expedited our need to pivot to electronic signing of things. I can't remember the last time I signed a purchase agreement in ink. So that's been sort of a necessity that we needed to start working with title companies right away to make sure that they would accept electronic signatures on things like that. But as I mentioned earlier, the collaboration has been extremely key, and that's what I'm very grateful for, the advances in technology and platforms like Dealpath, because as I mentioned, we've got teams all over the country that communicate together, and it's pretty critical for us to be able to move very quickly on deals and decisions so that our acquisitions people can get out there and be out in the markets making more transactions while all the necessary evils of the process of the acquisition process can be taken care of simultaneously. And that's really nice.
Yeah, I would say that, I've spent 9 of the last 10 years on the road, except for the last year, which I spent, at home for the most part. And so, and I went from doing things on the fly and emails at night and trying to keep up or pushing, engagements back and all that sort of thing and pushing decisions back to being able to respond to everything kind of instantaneously. A leading investment sales broker said that the speed of things where you need to hear back from 3 or 5 bidders, it all happens in the same day now instead of over 2 or 3 days. And so the speed of that, because everybody was just sitting in front of their computer all the time. And so that certainly made things faster, but it didn't make it better. I think that there's no substitute for getting out and kicking tires and being, especially in our business, you need to see what you're buying. And so I think that's, going to quickly revert back, but there are certain tools and certain ways of operating that we've learned over the last year, with Zoom being kind of a pervasive, or Teams or the other platforms. What's interesting to me is it's not this, the video boxes and seeing people's profile on it. It's seeing the screen share. And it's the information you're putting up, and that people in different places can be looking at the same set of plans or the same map or the same aerial, the same, underwriting, and manipulating, live and moving them that way. So I think that sort of thing, which frankly, you can learn to do on your iPad from the front, the passenger seat of a car, from your regional partner driving you from site to site, and you can conduct these Zoom meetings moving, so all that is just fantastic in terms of the speed of things. And so I think that's going to stay with us.
Maybe one additional angle to consider for our business is not only has the shift away from face-to-face affect how we operate on a day-to-day basis, but also how our customers operate. And the really significant, dramatic shift toward, omni-channel alternative fulfillment methods to provide the types of services that customers are demanding now. I mean, Amazon has set the standard of what delivery expectations should be. And as every other company tries to find a way to compete over the past year for the same reasons that we need to make our own businesses more tech enabled, has also been something that, it's important for us to be on the forefront of as well.
I will maybe just echo everybody here, but I think, from our perspective at Dealpath, real estate has always been about people with information and continues to be. And software technology tools are enabling that to be accomplished in better and better ways. With the pandemic, for our business, we are a beneficiary of it, and we can talk about the reasons, but the results are, we've been seeing our highest growth periods ever. We've been seeing increasing win rates. We've been seeing decreasing sales cycles. And really what all of that means is that there's clear recognition in the market of the need for these tools and making decisions now. I think that our clients need to operate at scale with speed and precision. They need to deliver optimal risk-adjusted returns. 2 of the key challenges to address are, decentralized data and highly complex workflows. And in the past 12 months, we've been doing that from remote environments. And investment decision glory is when you're able to see the performance of your owned portfolio overlaid with the opportunities that you're seeing in the market and the comps of every asset or deal that you've ever looked at or worked on. That is what Dealpath provides. I think key components of that are having that centralized data that is globally accessible, something that I think Tim and Sara were both talking about, having flexible workflows that enable your team to work effectively from wherever they might be working, which I think is kind of following on Jeff there. And then one last piece is having the data security that leading institutions require, as so much of this proprietary information is now being managed and stored in cloud solutions. This is becoming a really critical part of our business.
And Mike, I'll just kind of jump on there and there's a couple of different software platforms that have become kind of integral to my life, BTS being one of them, Dealpath being the other, which kind of added to CoStar, which was kind of there a little bit before. But, you know, we had all that lined up, you know, call it 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, and headed into the pandemic, it really made a difference. But what kind of, you combine that with Zoom, and you combine that with all the meetings I used to have being with our executive team, with our regional partners, with our investors, particularly with our investors who are mostly foreign and aren't allowed to come here and see things. And we go on Zoom and we put things on screen and we look at aerials and we look at buildings and we look at the underwriting and all the things that Dealpath allows us, and the due diligence and all the, you know, we're putting surveys and environmental reports and all, and we can pull it all up instantaneously and have this interaction with these important stakeholders and make decisions quickly. And it's from my you know, home, from a hotel, from the front seat of a car. And these things happen constantly on all those platforms. And what's, you know, it's really fascinating. We're making really big investment decisions with really important investors who can't come and see the assets. They're not allowed to come into the country. And we're making these decisions because that platform allows us to communicate all the information that they'd want to know. So it's a, you know, a plug for you guys. You've done a great job building something that's really useful.
Thank you. We appreciate it and are excited to get to do this work with you.
You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Speaking of data, so, you know, just staying on that topic a little bit longer, because we do on the deal side, you know, having access to data is such an important thing. But implementation of data is more than just inputting numbers in a grid. Data is useful because it can tell a story or many stories. Compared with a year ago, what kinds of stories are you able to tell with increased access to an adoption of better data? And I think, Tim, you touched on this a little bit with, you know, you bringing in investors and just everybody having access to the same information and lifetime as well.
Yeah, and it's really kind of fascinating that we really have this pervasive adoption at Dermody Properties of these platforms where everyone's on it every day and all day. And so the information that's going in there is really clean, and it's because people are using it constantly, and because the adoption rate's so high amongst our professionals, even the older guys who aren't, you know, the picking up technology as fast as the 20-year-olds are finding it, you know, a useful tool. And that leads to a lot of confidence in the data and a lot of you know, speed really in our execution, because we're not worried that data is being entered incorrectly or in two places at once, and, you know, and having conflicting numbers. We trust the information that we're using, which is you can only do that if everybody's using it in the same way.
I co-sign that. We've tracked a lot of data for many years at Black Creek. You know, we'll track the stats from all our PSAs, our relevant clauses. We'll track findings from phase one reports. We'll track costs from various proposals. Obviously, we're tracking performer returns and comparing against actual performance, that kind of thing. But historically, we've been tracking those in Excel, and it's been very siloed. So platforms such as Dealpath allow us to just do just what Tim said. It starts with the acquisitions people when they're first chasing a deal, and they put in the information they're learning from the market and from brokers and that kind of thing. When it gets under control and we're doing our due diligence, we can perfect the data. We can correct things if we notice errors that from the offering memorandums. Not that would ever happen, but we just keep building on that data, and it's always in the same source. Everybody from our company, even if they don't work on the transactions, but they need that data, whether it's marketing people or accountants, operations group, they know that that's the one source and that it's been vetted, and there's not multiple copies laying around with conflicting information. It's been really extremely helpful for us to feel a lot more confident on our data and just more connected, that we can all work on the same thing at the same time.
So less redundancy, less human error, less duplication, right? You're entering the
much
same information in 4 different, whether it's your deal memo, whether it's, investment report. So I'll add the efficiency and the wasted time. And I'd like to hear more from Jeff and Mike on that as well.
Yeah, one thing I was going to sort of piggyback on the prior topic around data is, as real estate investors, a lot of what we see is sort of lagging decisions that were made weeks or several months prior to that. And so, we think a lot about how do we get access to new data sets that can sort of inform how we think about investing. And in that, we've built a portfolio of technology businesses designed around the logistics ecosystem, so touching supply chain and e-commerce, with the idea that over time, these can give us insights into sort of real-time data and trends that you're seeing in the industry. So, for one example, we all know now that e-commerce achieved 10 years of growth through the first 3 months of COVID. And this was something we had a very early indication of through a company, IdealClick, which was founded by former Amazon executives, which have visibility into the real-time demand of the largest e-commerce marketplace. In the late March, amid all of the sort of COVID uncertainty and lockdowns, we could see that online sales through this channel were up 50% on a week-over-week basis, which kind of gave us confidence around what the lockdowns might mean, for our industry and e-commerce broadly. And you sort of fast forward to the end of 2020, sort of came as no surprise that Amazon, grew its total number of facilities by 50%, the vast majority of which were last mile delivery stations. And so just an example of finding ways to get visibility into kind of unique data sources and how that also informs our decision-making and strategy.
I will maybe speak a little bit more to the how than the what. But I think what, many teams have felt is that, there's a lot of time being spent by professionals doing repetitive administrative work and formatting data. Those are things that software is really, really good at. And as much as, we can create platforms and environments where you've got real-time data at your fingertips in the formats that you need, really frees professionals to do the work that they want to be doing and that their firms need for them to be doing. So, our view is really on that investment committee, investment team, capital deployment process. But I think that it's true across the organization.
Okay. How, we're talking about deals and deal documents. A large part of due diligence work is related to leases as well, right? Especially as you focus on some of your larger tenants. So how do the leases, which are again, a lot of documentation, right? How does that tie into the Dealpath process and you guys all using technology more efficiently to have some of that key data that's in the Argus model, for example, and in the way of an abstract, just tying into one place?
Well, I guess I would say when we approach a transaction, there's a lot more on leases, is just tons of documentation that goes into it. And we're only a 60-person firm, but I bet 25 people touch every deal. And all 25 people are attached to that deal in some way in Dealpath, where they all have access and they're all contributing their piece to whether it's doing, the geotech reports coming in on a development or someone analyzing lease or the financial statements coming from finance group. And then they're making comments in the due diligence module that says, here's how this credit looks, or here's what we found in the ground, or that sort of thing. And then everybody has access to it, but everybody's contributing to it at the same time. And so it really becomes this central depository, not only of just, a file server, but it's all of our thoughts that get added to the thing. And that makes it super collaborative. And frankly, when we come down to the end of due diligence, we get everybody on the phone, we put it on a screen, we go through that module, we open up all those documents and comments. Everybody gets their chance to say go, no go on the deal. And it's pretty fascinating process to have kind of all in one place like that.
Yeah, we build a pretty customized lease abstract info view in Dealpath, and so as we're going through the leases, we're logging obviously the important information and clauses and financial information, and then we also use their task feature to create open issues and things that we need to confirm or that are conflicting lease language that we need to resolve, that kind of thing. And that abstracting process then leads into a customized report that we've created that basically looks like your standard rent roll. And so it's easy to see all the tenants at once, in addition to seeing a detailed abstract. And then the fact that Dealpath can talk to other softwares, which is key. That information can then basically be chunked into your operations management software. You can eliminate redundant entry of that lease data for your operations, leasing, asset management teams, and they can in turn proceed with doing what they do best, rather than spending all their time re-abstracting a lease that we already did during the acquisitions process.
Okay.
We're using an example of leasing here, which I think is a good one. And, it's important that we have visibility for the collaboration that Tim was talking about, and also the accountability and controls, that, nothing falls through the cracks. We have this investment process, this diligence process where we're going to ensure that these things are done. And in this case, it is review and processing the leases and rent roll. We also want to know who did what when. We want to have accountability for those things that were done. And we want this to build an institutional knowledge base and data asset for our organization that shouldn't be locked up in one person's head or at a single point in time. How are we, building and compounding this knowledge that can be used across our organization, handed off to other teammates and departments, and referenced in the future, so that we can look back and understand what happened and who did it and why. So I think that those are other elements that can be applied to leasing, as well as more broadly.
Yeah, I think all of us are looking to find ways to incorporate business intelligence into our decision making, using data to drive insights, and that you have a sort of single source of truth with visibility and confidence in the underlying integrity of the data is where the sea change is. Whereas before, there's disparate Excel spreadsheets and Argus models and all sorts of kind of less transparent sort of ways to track the information that you need to be able to track to be able to perform this type of analysis as you compound the data.
That's a very good point, Jeff. I worked on the acquisition side for quite a few years, and I worked in asset management, and you talked about the efficient transition of information, and that information not staying in one person's head and not benefiting the person who takes over that deal, because everybody spends a lot of time on a deal, and sometimes it's just a shame that all of that information isn't being transferred over, and the second person has to start from scratch in certain cases, and start taking notes and learning more about the process. So that's a very good point here. In terms of just we talked about efficiency, we talked about data, and I do want to talk a little bit more about other technologies as well that we are seeing. And so, one of the things that fascinates me, especially on the logistics side, and with the exception of Sara, who focuses on all asset types, I think, Jeff, you and Tim really focus on industrial, but not limiting it to industrial. One of the things that would be very nice to touch upon is, what are some of the other forms of technology that you're working with or seeing some of your end users, be it your consumers or be it the tenants, that allow you to track and forecast growth areas, whether it's for leasing, whether it's for development, or just touching upon logistics systems improvements. I mean, we've all seen in multiple deals where, some of these very large logistics players will lease space, and then you hear they're going to spend millions of dollars as part of their leasehold improvements in investing in logistics technology. But for the most part, as I've understood it, this is proprietary to that particular user. But I'm starting to wonder if, will some of this shift to the landlord, where the landlord might start taking on some of these improvements, and would any of these improvements, could they be valued by the average tenant, or are some of these systems still very proprietary? So with that, maybe I'll throw that question that encompasses some other technology in real estate.
And maybe I'll jump in. Obviously, groups like Amazon are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into their warehouses toward automation that helps them, continue to meet their capacity. Something that we've seen a lot of and have a lens into is what's sort of this broad democratization of last mile delivery. And, there's a number of logistics technology businesses, again, some of which that we've invested in, that help to provide these services for everyone who's sort of trying to stay up to the standards that Amazon is providing. So for one example, Deliver is a group that's enables merchants, some of which sell direct to consumers or otherwise outside of the Amazon ecosystem, to offer fast and free delivery. And currently, they provide a 2-day guarantee that merchants can provide to end consumers, and are making a push toward 1 day and same day, kind of into the future. And these trends sort of give us insight and visibility into this idea that it's not just Amazon that's going to need these last mile facilities. The need for e-commerce sellers broadly to forward deploy inventory close to the end user is something that you're going to continue to see, I think, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I have a 20-year-old engineering student who told me that nothing was better when I was 20 than when he was 20, right? Which is kind of funny, but it's hard to argue with. I've got a couple examples, but it's interesting that you can go into a very nice and pay up to stay in a 100-year-old hotel somewhere. It was a vintage office building, could be a really cool place to spend your time, but there's no such thing as a 100-year-old industrial building that's worth a damn. And I say that even in the last 10 or 15 years, it's even worse, right? Where it just advances and advances. So the logistics space, technology really matters, and it's being applied at a really rapid pace. And there are some obvious leaders in that category, but everybody's trying to catch up and to participate and compete technologically in their processes to get faster and more efficient. And so as landlords and as developers, we have to pay attention to what the needs are for those users. And it doesn't really, we're not really introducing to them, we're following. We're not telling them, hey, you need robots. I mean, they know that what they need is power. They need maneuvering. They need more clear height. They need buildings, designed and situated certain ways. And we're constantly evolving our specs and our design. We're at Dermody Properties, we're obsessed with design because we're listening to the customers and what they need. And that's kind of fun to try to be anticipating what folks are needing and investing for that. But in terms of, it's not our job to figure out the next innovation for how they're operating inside the buildings. It's our job to keep up with them.
That's very true. The pandemic pretty much pushed e-commerce into overdrive for a lot of our tenants, and between needing to make sure that their businesses were able to accommodate e-commerce because everybody was stuck at home for the most part, and then also having to diversify their suppliers a little more and not be so dependent on a specific foreign supplier because other countries were shut down. So just like Tim said, we learned from how our tenants dealt with the pandemic to really kind of see the impact, particularly on industrial and the really, really steady and growing demand for industrial to accommodate these tenants as they adapt to a more e-commerce universe. And I don't think that's going to change.
You know, the other thing I'd add to that is the electrification of parking lots. You know, the electric delivery van is on its way, and we're already seeing, you know, a lot of investment going into the ground on these parking fields so that they can accommodate overnight charging of their fleet. That's a cool innovation that I think we're going to see a lot of.
On the digital side, we see the modern real estate tech stack really being comprised of multiple solutions that are best of breed. And kind of upstream from us, we see different discovery services, which include great market data services like CoStar, RCA, or CompStack. We see advisory services like JLL and CBRE and Easthill and Cushman, as well as CRM systems. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we see asset and property management solutions, which can kind of be subdivided between the revenue side and the expense side. We see VTS as the most elegant leasing platform and solution for managing your revenue operations. And then for property accounting, what we see most is firms that are leveraging Yardi and RealPage and MRI and Appfolio in certain segments. And then fund administration and investor relations has really been growing as a category, and we see Juniper Square as one of the big players in that space. It's critical that these different solutions are integrated together and that clients have the ability to seamlessly transfer their data between these different services. That's another big change that we've seen in the market over the past few years, and likely to be a major trend over the coming period.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm just looking at the time. I see a couple questions have come in on the chat box. Both people I recognize. So Tim, you have a question. Can I ask you to, if you're unmuted, can I ask you to just direct that question to the panelists? Carolina, is that possible? Or
yes, you should be able to.
Yep. Can you hear me?
yes. Hey, Tim.
Hi there. So Tim Savage, NYU Shack Institute of Real Estate, former managing director of CBRE Econometric Advisors. So this is a superb panel. Comments are just tremendous. I'm actually teaching a big ideas class, and I may reach out to each one of you to do a guest lecture. I would submit, and I submit this based on observation, that a lot of these older organizations just stopped innovating. And I know that's true of EA. And in academics, we call this a tenure effect, right? You get tenure and you don't need to do anything more. Comments, thoughts about that conjecture, especially from Dealpath. And thank you.
I would say for at least our reference frame, and so maybe over the past 10 years, it does seem like there was a period of time where kind of large incumbents maybe were less focused on innovation, and there wasn't a lot happening. More recently, I think that there's been this influx of capital and development and a lot of new upstarts, and that as we have started to see that adoption and proven the opportunity, that those incumbents have really gotten a lot more active. And over the past couple of years, it feels like this market is moving really quickly. There's a lot happening. We say with our team, it might be a funny analogy, but I think for us it's very true. If it was the year 1800 and you weren't in London, you weren't in it. And if it was the year 1900 and you weren't in New York City, you weren't in it. If it is 2021 and you're not in Proptech, you're not in it. This is where the action is at. The largest industry, the largest asset class in the world is going through a belated and very accelerated digital transformation. And that is so exciting. It's what inspires us to get up and work hard every day.
And maybe just to piggyback on that, there's this digital transformation for all of our customers, and how rapid we are seeing it with COVID as an accelerant forces us as real estate investors to, find ways to use technology, whether it's in our operations, whether it's in our workflow, or whether it's to help kind of derive real-time insights and forecasting to try to create our own edge, because it's a very crowded space and a crowded sector, and technology is another way that we can continue to differentiate over time.
Agreed. If there has been a lack of innovation due to the tenure effect, I think that time is over, because everybody's jumping on board, and you're really going to be left behind if you don't continue to pursue and adapt technologies to help do everything quicker and better. And because almost everybody that is in our industry now is sharing and utilizing collective data and making it work so well, it'd kind of be crazy to leave it behind.
I have a question. Are you finding, and this is maybe directed towards you, but I'd love to hear the other panelists' questions too. Are you finding that there's still firms who are more focused on cost and just still trying to understand the cost and benefits? Or are you finding, especially during the pandemic and remote work, that's accelerating companies who have, very focused on budgets or not really sure about approving technology and technology budgets? Are you finding that's changing during this time?
I do, and I think we were talking about this in a smaller group before the panel. Change management is hard, and you don't change for the sake of change. There needs to be very clear benefits and return on investment. Those might be increased revenue generation. Those could be cost savings, but there needs to be clear value. So as there's been all of this investment and development in Proptech, I think that the important thing to overcome has been to demonstrate that clear value. And as that is happening, we're seeing this acceleration in adoption. I feel like we maybe kind of crossed the first chasm in 2019 from early adopters to early majority, and are now crossing that next chasm of early majority to mass market adoption of these new solutions. But it is critical that there be a clear ROI, a clear value to doing and accomplishing that change.
Okay. And sometimes it helps when you see your peers do it. It just becomes a little bit easier to justify internally, because I worked on some larger institutions, and there's always the real estate team who wants a lot of tools, and then there's the IT team who have their own budget and their own way of analyzing, and sometimes they don't understand exactly what the real estate team is doing. To Sarah's point earlier, just the electronic signature, I can't imagine ever printing a doc out and signing it only to scan it and shred it. And e-notarization is another thing that I'm super impressed about, is you don't have to run around to a notary's office anymore. Things we will not miss. We have time for one more question, and then I'd like to keep a minute for housekeeping. So actually, Josh Simon from EBI has a question about third-party report integration. So Josh, I unmuted you if you want to ask your question.
Oh, great panel. Thanks, Charmaine. Thanks, everybody. My name is Josh Simon. I'm with EBI Consulting. We're a national engineering and environmental due diligence firm. And I was perplexed 3 years ago when management said, we're no longer an engineering and environmental company, we're a data company. And so I think it plays very nicely with this panel. And I think Sara really nailed it. And, would love to maybe have follow-up because there's tremendous amount of efficiency that's not being done in the real estate community. And for us, we created a B2B platform a few years ago, and it's proved to be highly successful for our clients in terms of streamlining processes, ordering, report and data delivery, data input, from the client side, where, you don't have to, take information from, let's say, capital expenditures or reserves and have to re-enter it, into our clients' models, right? So it can be imported and exported, really efficiently, and it saves so much time on everybody's hand. And, as far as, IT and security, it's all being, when you have the IT, like Charmaine said, taken care of, it works so well and so efficiently. And I think everybody, Mike hit it as well, as, this is where the next wave is. And EBI is on board. I don't have a specific question. I was just curious from, engineering and environmental side, are all of you seeing that kind of technology where you're able to upload and download payloads in exchange quickly, efficiently? And maybe if not, maybe we can have a follow-up call.
Josh, I think what I would say to that is every day I get the feeling that these software packages have so much more to offer than we're using. It really seems like early days in terms of our adoption of these things, and that there's more and more. And I'll raise my hand and say, could it do this? And they say, well, let's check. And we find out, oh yeah, we could do that. And so there's, we keep adding people, we keep adding more depth to the thing. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, we're really appreciating all the software companies that are identifying these unserved or underserved niches in the real estate process. There's a lot, and they're all very unique. And if there's a software company that says we'll do it all, we can cover everything from soup to nuts, it means that they're probably not doing any of it very well. And so companies like Dealpath and what you're suggesting that EBI is coming out with, are to be able to identify an area that hasn't been utilized to its potential yet, and being able to focus on that. And as I mentioned before, the key being making it so that software plays nice with others. That can be huge, because there's a lot of companies in this industry, and all have a lot of unique needs with it. And to the extent that we can all use these software services that talk to each other and that enables the flow of data is a pretty big game changer for our industry.
Yeah, I work with Josh's company a lot, and sometimes he sends 50 meg files. So always a good way to streamline some of this stuff. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I was just going to say, even just double clicking on the property condition report, for a long time, this was just thought of as how we estimate our capital reserve. But I think for us, this is one of the forefronts of how we collect data. So when you've got the engineers on site, there's a lot of facts and characteristics about a building that maybe historically we weren't collecting. And then when you take that a step further around kind of how we view ESG, things like climate resiliency, or what kind of improvements we can make on a sustainability front, or whether we can install solar, kind of all of these data points are things that we're able to collaborate with our property condition providers in a way that we really never had been able to do so in the past.
Yep. So we're right at noon. There's another couple questions that I'm sorry we don't really have time to discuss. It is noon, so I want to thank the panelists for your time and great insight. It has been great spending an hour on this topic. So thank you very much on behalf of NAIOP, our members and our guests. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Before we go, we as an organization, just the chapter, we're very used to doing in-person events, right? And this is a year where there are some pros and cons. For example, some of you dialing in. I know, Tim, you're in the Midwest, and Sarah, for example, you're in Denver. And normal times we couldn't have you come and join. And Mike, I know you're in the Bay Area, right? Jeff, I actually don't know where you are. Are you in New York?
LA at the moment.
Okay, so see, I mean, we would not have had the pleasure of having you join us for most of our events used to be in person. So before we sign off, we're just polling our attendees. We're starting to think about in-person events. Golf, we have our golf tournament scheduled for September 1st. That's an easier one, and I don't think too many people are going to be concerned about that. But if you have a minute or two, Carolina's just going to pull up a poll. We're just doing a survey on in-person events and what are you looking forward to? What are you comfortable with? So I think you should have seen the poll pop up. Okay, this is fascinating. Since we're talking about data and analytics, I will read this to you. So seems like there are people who are, seems like most of the people are comfortable, with in-person events in May, in June, or another contingent voted for during the fall months. And then in terms of types of events, outdoor happy hours won by a large lead, and it doesn't surprise me. NAIOP is known for our summer rooftop happy hours. So thank you very much for your time and participation, and we look forward to staying in touch and hoping to host, according to this survey, a happy hour very soon.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thanks,
you
all.
very
It's great
much.
talking to you all.